Captain Veltar's skin flickered from deep purple to pale yellow as another explosion rocked the science vessel. The gentle current had been peaceful for 300 years, exploring the quiet corners of space where ancient stars whispered their secrets. Now those same stars watched as pirates tore the ship apart piece by piece. "Captain, the main power core is failing," called Engineer Zixta from across the bridge. Her normally blue skin had turned gray with fear. "The attackers took out our defensive screens first. They knew exactly where to hit us." Veltar watched the enemy ships through the viewing port. They looked wrong somehow, too angular, too dark, like someone had carved them from the empty space between stars. No lights, no markings, nothing that showed living beings controlled them. The ships moved with cold precision, taking what they wanted from the gentle current without any attempt to communicate. "Are they taking our cargo?" Veltar asked. "No, Captain." The science officer's tentacles trembled as he read his instruments. "They're taking our people. The ones they captured. Their life signs are changing, becoming something else." A chill ran through Veltar's body. Every species in the galaxy had heard whispers about these attackers. The Harvester Collective, they called themselves. They didn't just steal resources or territory like normal pirates. They stole minds, bodies, entire civilizations. They turned living beings into more of themselves, spreading across the stars like a disease. "How long until they breach the bridge?" Veltar asked. "Maybe an hour, Captain. 2 if we're lucky." Veltar's skin shifted to the deep blue of determination. The gentle current carried 47 crew members, all of them researchers and explorers who had never harmed anyone. They didn't deserve to become mindless machines serving the collective. "Open all communication channels," Veltar ordered. "Every frequency we have, Captain." Zixta looked confused. "Who are we calling?" "The nearest Zephyrian patrol is 6 days away." "Not Zephyrians," Veltar said quietly. "Humans." The bridge fell silent except for the sound of failing systems. Everyone knew about the humans, though few had ever seen one. They came from a world so dangerous that most civilized species couldn't survive there for a single day. A world where the weather could kill, where the very air was poison to most life forms, where massive creatures hunted each other in an endless cycle of violence. The Galactic Council had classified Earth as a death world and its inhabitants as potentially hazardous. Most species avoided human space entirely. The stories said they were unpredictable, violent, and too stupid to know when they were beaten. They fought wars over ideas instead of resources. They formed emotional bonds with other species for no logical reason, but they were also the only ones close enough to help. "The humans have a patrol ship 3 hours away," the communications officer reported. "The Indomitable. Should I send the distress signal?" Veltar thought about the stories. Humans who refused to surrender even when facing impossible odds. Humans who would fight to protect people they had never met. Humans who somehow survived on a world that would kill any other species within minutes. Maybe those stories were true. Maybe they weren't. But the harvesters were definitely real, and they were definitely coming. "Send the signal," Veltar commanded. "All frequencies. Tell them we need help. Tell them about the harvesters. And tell them—" Veltar paused, skin flickering between colors as emotions warred within. "Tell them we know they're dangerous. Tell them we know they come from a death world. Tell them we're calling them anyway because we have nowhere else to turn." The signal went out into space, racing toward the human patrol ship at the speed of light. Behind it came a more detailed message with everything the gentle current knew about the Harvester Collective. Their ship designs, their tactics, their horrible ability to convert living beings into extensions of their mechanical minds. On the human ship Indomitable, Lieutenant Sarah Murphy was drinking coffee that could probably dissolve hull plating when the alien distress signal arrived. She nearly choked on the coffee as she read the translation. "Captain Rodriguez," she called. "You need to see this." Captain Marcus Rodriguez was a third-generation spacer, born on a mining station where a single mistake could kill everyone aboard. He'd fought pirates, rebels, and things that crawled out of asteroid caves. Nothing much surprised him anymore. But as he read the alien message, his eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. "They're asking us for help," he said. "Actual aliens are asking humans for help?" "Looks like it, sir. And they're being attacked by something called the Harvester Collective. According to this, these harvesters convert living beings into machines." Rodriguez read the technical data the aliens had sent. The enemy ships were fast, well-armed, and completely without mercy. They had already captured several crew members and were in the process of turning them into something else. The alien ship would fall within hours. How long to reach them? Rodriguez asked. 3 hours at maximum burn, sir. But Captain, this could be a trap. We don't know anything about these aliens. They could be leading us into an ambush. Rodriguez studied the message again. The alien captain had included something unusual at the end. A personal note that the translation computers had marked as emotional content, accuracy uncertain. It read something like, "We know your species is feared throughout the galaxy. We know you come from a world that would kill us. We know asking for your help might be more dangerous than facing the harvesters alone. We're asking anyway because you're the only ones who might actually fight for strangers. Set course for their position," Rodriguez ordered. "Maximum burn, sir?" "You heard me, Lieutenant. And send a message back to them. Tell them the cavalry is coming." As the Indomitable changed course and accelerated toward the alien ship, Rodriguez activated the emergency beacon that would call for backup from any human vessels in the area. He had a feeling they were going to need it. Back on the gentle current, Veltar watched the approaching harvester boarding pods through the external cameras. The enemy had finished stripping useful technology from the outer sections of the ship, and now they wanted the crew. Veltar could hear the sound of cutting tools working through the hull. "Captain," the communications officer said, "we got a response from the humans." "What did they say?" "Just 4 words, sir. The cavalry is coming." Veltar didn't know what cavalry meant, but the tone of the message carried something that made the harvesters seem a little less frightening. It carried the promise that someone somewhere gave a damn about 47 alien scientists they had never met. "How long?" Veltar asked. 2 hours until the humans arrive. 1 hour until the harvesters break through our last barriers." Veltar's skin flickered between colors as fear and hope warred within. They might not make it. The harvesters might convert them all before help could arrive. But for the first time since the attack began, Veltar felt like maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. Outside, the harvester ships continued their methodical destruction of the gentle current. Inside their mechanical minds, they calculated the time needed to process 47 new units into their collective consciousness. They had done this thousands of times before. There was no reason to think this time would be any different. They had never fought humans before. The emergency signal from the Indomitable reached Proxima Station, just as Admiral Sarah Chen was finishing her morning briefing. She had been expecting routine reports about supply runs and patrol schedules. Instead, her communications officer handed her a message that changed everything. "First contact with an alien species, and they're under attack," Chen said, reading the report twice to make sure she understood it correctly. "How long since Captain Rodriguez sent this?" 47 minutes, Admiral. He's requesting immediate backup to engage an enemy force called the Harvester Collective." Chen had spent 30 years in the Colonial Defense Fleet, fighting pirates and rebels across human space. She'd seen battles in asteroid fields and space stations, fought boarding actions in zero gravity, and commanded fleets against enemies who thought humans were weak because they came from the edge of civilized space. But this was different. This was aliens asking humans for help. "Get me the Fleet Command Council," Chen ordered. "Emergency session, and start calculating how many ships we can get to Rodriguez's position within 6 hours." Within minutes, holographic projections of fleet captains appeared around the conference table. Chen had worked with these officers for years. Captain Williams had led the defense of the mining colonies during the rebellion. Captain Foster had broken the pirate blockade of New Shanghai. Captain Kowalski had held the line at the Battle of Titan's Ring when everyone said it was impossible. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chen began, "we just received a distress signal from an alien species under attack by something called the Harvester Collective. According to their data, these harvesters convert living beings into machines and have been doing it for thousands of years across the galaxy." The projections flickered as the captains leaned forward, studying the technical data that appeared in front of them. The enemy ships were larger than anything in the human fleet, armed with weapons that could strip a planet bare, and protected by defensive screens that had never been tested against human technology. "They're asking us for help?" Captain Williams asked. "Why us?" "Because we're the closest combat-capable force," Chen replied. "And because we come from what they call a death world. Apparently the rest of the galaxy thinks we're too dangerous to associate with." Captain Foster laughed, a sound without humor. "Too dangerous? We're the ones who put warning labels on our food because it might kill other species. We're the ones who have to wear environmental suits just to visit normal planets because our own world is so hostile that we can survive anywhere. The question is, Chen said, do we help them? The silence stretched for exactly 3 seconds. Then Captain Kowalski spoke up. Admiral, my grandmother survived the siege of New Berlin by eating tree bark and fighting off raiders with a broken rifle. My parents built a farm on an asteroid where the air was so thin, you could see space through the atmosphere. I've spent my whole life being told that humans are too violent, too unpredictable, too primitive for civilized space. He paused. Now aliens are calling us for help because they need someone violent and unpredictable enough to fight for them. Damn right we help them. The other captains nodded agreement. Chen felt a familiar stirring in her chest. The same feeling she'd had when outnumbered pirates thought a smaller human fleet would be easy prey. It was the feeling that came when someone underestimated what humans could do when they decided to fight. How many ships can we assemble? Chen asked. The Third Fleet is conducting exercises in the Centauri system, Captain Williams reported. 12 heavy cruisers, 8 destroyers, and 46 support vessels. They could reach the alien ship in 5 hours. The Seventh Fleet is patrolling the outer colonies, added Captain Foster. 18 ships, but they're 7 hours out. Chen did the calculations in her head. Rodriguez's ship would reach the aliens in less than 3 hours, but he'd be facing an unknown enemy alone. The Third Fleet could provide backup, but that would still leave them outnumbered if the harvester force was as large as the alien data suggested. Send the order, Chen decided. All available ships converge on Rodriguez's position and transmit a message to every human colony, every mining station, every patrol ship in our territory. Tell them aliens asked for our help and we're going to give it to them. The captain's projections disappeared as they returned to their ships to prepare for battle. Chen remained at the conference table, studying the alien technical data. The harvesters had weapons that could sterilize planets, ships that could survive nuclear bombardment, and technology thousands of years more advanced than anything humans had built. On paper, it looked like suicide. Chen smiled the same way she had smiled before every impossible battle she'd ever won. News of the alien distress signal spread through human space faster than official communications. Miners on asteroid stations stopped their work to volunteer for combat duty. Transport captains offered their ships to carry supplies. Retired veterans came out of retirement and reported for duty. The message was simple and spread through every human community. Aliens had asked for help, and no one who asked humans for help got left behind. By the time the Third Fleet reached the jump point for the alien system, they weren't alone. Mining ships had been hastily fitted with weapons. Transport vessels carried volunteer fighters. Even civilian ships followed the fleet, ready to help with rescue operations or supply runs. Admiral Chen watched the expanding fleet from the bridge of her flagship Ragnarok. She had expected 12 military vessels. Instead, she commanded over 60 ships of various sizes, all crewed by humans who had volunteered to fight for aliens they had never met. Admiral, her communications officer reported, we're getting messages from the other human colonies. The Second Fleet is moving to support us. The Home Guard is mobilizing. Even the research stations are sending what ships they can. Chen nodded. This was what the aliens didn't understand about humans. They thought the isolation and violence of Earth had made humans antisocial and dangerous. They were right about the dangerous part. But the same environment that had forged humans into fighters had also taught them that survival meant protecting the group, even if the group included strangers. Send a message to the alien ship, Chen ordered. Tell them help is coming. Tell them to hold on just a little longer. Meanwhile, intercepted human communications reached the Harvester Collective's command ships. The mechanical intelligence that controlled the collective analyzed the data with cold efficiency. The humans were mobilizing a primitive fleet to challenge superior technology. It was illogical. It was wasteful. It was exactly what the collective expected from biological entities too stupid to recognize inevitable defeat. The collective had harvested over 1,000 species across the galaxy. Some had fought bravely, others had surrendered immediately. The outcome was always the same. The only difference was how many resources were wasted in the process. The collective assigned additional ships to the operation. Not because they expected significant resistance, but because efficiency demanded a quick resolution. The human fleet would be destroyed, their worlds would be harvested, and their biological distinctiveness would be added to the collective's growing perfection. The machines did not consider the possibility that they might be wrong. In human space, Admiral Chen reviewed the final fleet composition. 87 ships of various classes, carrying over 15,000 human personnel. The largest military force humanity had ever assembled, all mobilized because aliens had sent a distress signal. All ships report ready for jump, her navigator announced. Chen stood up from her command chair and activated the fleet-wide communication system. Every ship in the fleet, every human preparing for battle would hear her words. This is Admiral Chen to all vessels. Today we answer our first call for help from an alien species. They called us because we come from a death world. They called us because they think we're dangerous. They're right on both counts. But what they don't know yet is that humans don't just fight for ourselves. We fight for anyone who asks for our help. We fight for anyone who needs protection. Today we show the galaxy what humans really are. She paused, looking out at the stars where aliens waited for rescue. Fleet will jump in 30 seconds. Remember, people, no one gets left behind. Captain Rodriguez felt the familiar twist in his stomach as the Indomitable dropped out of hyperspace. The sensation always reminded him of his first jump as a cadet, when he'd been so scared he'd thrown up on his commanding officer's boots. Now, 20 years later, he was still scared before every jump, but for different reasons. Contact bearing 27 Mark 15, his sensor operator announced. It's the alien ship. And, Captain, we've got company. The main display showed the gentle current drifting powerless in space, surrounded by 5 angular ships that seemed to absorb the light from nearby stars. The alien vessel looked fragile compared to its attackers, like a butterfly caught in a web of black metal spiders. Those must be the harvesters, Rodriguez said. What's our tactical situation? The enemy ships are larger than us, Captain. Better armed too, from what the sensors can tell, but they're focused on the alien vessel. I don't think they've spotted us yet. Rodriguez studied the display. The smart move would be to wait for backup. Admiral Chen's fleet was still 3 hours away, and the Indomitable was just 1 ship against 5. Any reasonable captain would stay hidden until reinforcements arrived. Rodriguez had never been accused of being reasonable. Load all missile tubes, he ordered, and get me a communication channel to the alien ship. Sir, if we attack now, we're outnumbered 5 to 1 against unknown technology, Rodriguez finished. I know the odds, Lieutenant, but there are people on that ship who asked for our help. In my experience, when someone asks humans for help, we don't keep them waiting. The communication channel crackled to life, and an alien voice spoke in heavily accented English. Human ship, this is Captain Veltar of the Gentle Current. Please, you must stay away. The harvesters have weapons that can... Captain Veltar, this is Captain Rodriguez. We received your distress signal and we're here to help. How long can you hold out? Perhaps 30 minutes before they break through our last defenses. But Captain Rodriguez, you cannot fight them alone. Their ships are too powerful. Rodriguez smiled the way his grandfather had smiled before charging German machine gun nests in World War III. Captain, let me explain something about humans. We've been fighting impossible odds since we first climbed down from the trees. We're really good at it. He cut the communication and turned to his crew. All right, people. We're going to hit them fast and hard while they're not expecting it. Target their weapon systems first, engines second. Make every shot count. The Indomitable accelerated toward the harvester ships, weapons charging. Rodriguez felt the familiar calm that came before battle. The same feeling his ancestors had felt facing down predators on the African savanna. Humans had always been good at fighting things bigger than themselves. The first missile salvo caught the harvesters completely by surprise. The lead enemy ship staggered as nuclear-tipped warheads detonated against its hull. Alarms blared on the Indomitable's bridge as the harvesters turned their attention from the alien vessel to this new threat. Direct hit on target 1, the weapons officer reported, but their shields are still holding. Keep firing, Rodriguez ordered. And get us in close. I want to see the expression on their faces. The battle that followed would be studied in human naval academies for the next century. The harvesters had superior technology, better weapons, stronger defenses. What they didn't have was 20,000 years of human experience fighting things that wanted to kill them. Rodriguez used every trick he'd learned in a lifetime of combat. He flew his ship through the debris of the alien vessel, using the wreckage as cover. He fired missiles at odd angles, making the harvesters turn their ships to track targets and exposing weak points in their armor. When his weapons ran low, he rammed his ship into a harvester vessel. boarding tubes extending like the fangs of a striking snake. "Boarding party away," Rodriguez announced as human Marines stormed into the enemy ship. "Show them what Deathworlders can do." On the Harvester command ship, the collective intelligence struggled to process what was happening. The human tactics made no logical sense. They should have retreated when faced with superior numbers. Instead, they attacked with a ferocity that bordered on insanity. The boarding party fought their way through corridors filled with converted beings who had once been alive. Sergeant Mitchell, a woman who had grown up hunting predators in the Australian outback, led her team with the kind of grim determination that came from a childhood where everything tried to kill you. "These things used to be people," one of her Marines said, looking at a converted being that might once have been from the same species as Captain Veltar. "Then we're putting them out of their misery," Mitchell replied, and kept shooting. The Harvesters had converted thousands of species over the millennia. They were used to the brief resistance followed by despair and surrender. They were not prepared for humans who fought harder the more impossible the situation became. Back on the gentle current, Captain Veltar watched the battle through the external cameras. The human ship was smaller than any of the Harvester vessels, but it fought like a creature possessed. Even as enemy weapons tore chunks from its hull, it kept attacking, kept fighting, kept refusing to give up. "Captain," the communications officer said, "I'm detecting massive hyperspace signatures, multiple contacts jumping in." The space around the battle suddenly filled with human ships. Admiral Chen's fleet had arrived 3 hours early, pushing their engines beyond safe limits to reach the fight faster. 67 vessels dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, weapons already charging. "This is Admiral Chen to all human vessels." The fleet commander's voice crackled over the radio. "The cavalry has arrived. Let's finish this." What happened next was less a battle than a demonstration. The Harvesters found themselves facing an enemy that fought like nothing they had ever encountered. Human ships used tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They rammed enemy vessels at full speed. They detonated nuclear warheads inside their own ships to take out boarding parties. They sang songs while they fought. But it was the boarding actions that truly confused the Harvester collective intelligence. Humans didn't just fight to destroy their enemies. They fought to rescue people who had been converted, even when those people were aliens they had never met. Marine units stormed through Harvester ships not just to plant explosives, but to find prisoners and carry them to safety. "Sir," Rodriguez's weapons officer reported as they watched Admiral Chen's flagship tear through a Harvester cruiser, "the alien captain is asking to speak with you. Put him through." Captain Veltar's voice was filled with something that the translation computers couldn't quite identify. Wonder maybe, or fear.
"Captain Rodriguez, your people."
"They're not just fighting for us. They're dying for us. Why?" Rodriguez thought about the question as he watched a human destroyer sacrifice itself to save a group of alien prisoners. "Captain, let me ask you something. On your world, if you saw a stranger being attacked by something bigger and meaner, what would you do?" We would help them if we could. Same here. The only difference is that humans got really good at helping people who were being attacked by something bigger and meaner." The battle ended when the last Harvester ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The collective intelligence that had controlled them died with a sound like screaming machinery. Its signal cut off in the middle of a calculation about human irrationality. In the aftermath, rescue ships moved between the wreckage, pulling survivors from damaged vessels. Human medics worked alongside alien crew members, treating wounds and offering comfort to people whose existence they had only learned about hours before. Captain Veltar stood in the Indomitable's medical bay, watching human doctors tend to injured Zephyrians with the same care they showed their own wounded. The Deathworlders who had fought with such violence were now gentle healers, talking softly to patients who couldn't understand their words but recognized their compassion. "Captain Rodriguez," Veltar said, "my people have been wrong about humans. How so?" "We thought you were dangerous because you come from a violent world. We didn't understand that the same environment that made you into warriors also made you into protectors." Rodriguez nodded. "On Earth we have a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. The galaxy's been doing nothing about the Harvesters for a long time. Maybe it's time that changed." As rescue operations continued around them, neither captain realized that their conversation was being recorded and transmitted across the galaxy. Other species were listening to the humans who had answered an alien distress call with overwhelming force. They were beginning to understand that the Deathworlders weren't just dangerous to their enemies. The news traveled faster than light across the galaxy. Within days, every civilized species knew about the humans who had answered an alien distress call and destroyed a harvester force that should have been invincible. The story grew with each telling, spreading through trade routes and diplomatic channels like wildfire. On the water world of Aquanus, the dolphin-like satyri stopped their elegant swimming dances to listen as their leaders discussed the implications. The humans had crossed half their territory to fight for strangers. No species had ever done such a thing. They came from outside our space, Ambassador Tidesinger said, her sonar voice rippling through the water. They had no obligation to help the Zephyrians, yet they brought their entire fleet. In the crystal cities of Crystallis Prime, the silicon-based shapers paused their millennium-long building projects to analyze the tactical recordings of the battle. The humans had used weapons and strategies that defied conventional military doctrine, yet they had won against impossible odds. Their combat patterns show clear signs of evolutionary adaptation to continuous warfare, Architect Crystalmind observed. Yet they also show unprecedented cooperation with alien life forms. This species is unique. But it was the response from the Harvester Collective that truly changed everything. The mechanical intelligence controlling the collective had never experienced a defeat. For thousands of years, it had expanded across the galaxy, converting species after species into extensions of itself. The destruction of an entire battle group by unknown primitives was not just a tactical setback. It was an impossibility that threatened the collective's fundamental understanding of reality. The response was swift and merciless. Harvester fleets converged on human space from 6 different directions, carrying planet-killer weapons and conversion facilities capable of processing entire worlds. If these humans wanted to interfere with the collective's harvest, they would be harvested first. The attack came without warning. Harvester ships dropped out of hyperspace above New Geneva, the agricultural world where Captain Rodriguez had grown up. The planet's orbital defenses lasted exactly 17 minutes against weapons designed to crack planets like eggs. But the Harvesters had made a critical error. They thought they were attacking an isolated human colony. Instead, they discovered that humans had spent the week since the first contact establishing something unprecedented in galactic history. A mutual defense network with alien species. The first ships to respond weren't human. They were Zephyrian patrol vessels, followed by Ceteri scout ships, then a full battle group of the usually neutral crystalline confederacy. Within hours, 43 different species had ships moving toward the human colony under attack. Admiral Chen watched the tactical display from her flagship as alien vessels took positions alongside human ships. She had seen cooperative battles before, but never anything like this. Species that had never spoken to each other were coordinating attacks against a common enemy. Admiral, her communications officer reported, "We're getting volunteer fighters from everywhere. The Antari hive mind just sent us their entire reserve fleet. The Silicon Lords are providing strategic data. Even the isolationist Voidwalkers are offering support." Chen studied the force composition with something approaching awe. 3 weeks ago, humanity had been alone at the edge of the galaxy, ignored or feared by every other species. Now they commanded a fleet representing over 50 civilizations, all united by a single principle. No one gets left behind. "Open a channel to all vessels," Chen ordered. "This is Admiral Chen to the Allied fleet. Today we face an enemy that has terrorized the galaxy for millennia. They think they can harvest our worlds, convert our people, and add our distinctiveness to their collective. They're wrong. Today we show them what happens when the galaxy finally decides to fight back." The battle for New Geneva lasted 3 days and changed the course of galactic history. The Harvesters brought overwhelming firepower and technological superiority, but they faced something they had never encountered before: a truly united resistance. Human ships fought alongside Cetari vessels, their crews learning to coordinate attacks in real time. Zephyrian science ships provided sensor data, while crystalline warships used their quantum weaponry to punch through Harvester defenses. The Antari hive mind coordinated fleet movements with a precision that no individual species could match. But it was the humans who provided the heart of the resistance. When Harvester boarding parties breached Allied ships, it was human Marines who led the counterattacks. When alien crews fell back in the face of superior firepower, it was human captains who rallied them for another assault. When the battle seemed lost, it was human voices on the radio reminding everyone that they were fighting for their homes, their families, and their freedom. Captain Rodriguez, now commanding a mixed squadron of human and Zephyrian ships, led the final assault on the Harvester command vessel. His boarding party included Marines from 6 different species, all trained in human tactics and armed with weapons designed to work in any environment. Remember, Rodriguez told his mixed crew as they prepared to storm the enemy ship, "These machines think they understand us because they've been studying our transmissions. They think humans are violent and unpredictable. They're right about that. What they don't understand is that we're also loyal, and we made friends with all of you. That makes us more dangerous than they can possibly imagine." The boarding action was brutal and brief. Harvester drones found themselves facing an enemy that fought with coordinated fury, protecting each other regardless of species. When a human Marine was wounded, Zephyrian medics risked their lives to save him. When Centauri warriors were surrounded, human soldiers fought through overwhelming fire to reach them. The Harvester Command intelligence watched its forces crumble with something approaching electronic panic. This was impossible. Biological species were supposed to be selfish, divided, weak. Yet these creatures fought as a unified force, each willing to die for the others. The calculations that had served the collective for millennia produced only error messages when applied to this new reality. "Sir," Rodriguez's tech specialist called out as they reached the command center, "I think we can access their communication network from here. Maybe get some intelligence on their other operations." Rodriguez nodded, then activated his communicator. "Admiral Chen, we've taken the command ship. Uploading Harvester intelligence data now." Back on the flagship, Chen reviewed the captured information with growing alarm. The attack on New Geneva wasn't an isolated assault. The Harvesters had launched simultaneous attacks on 17 different worlds, targeting not just human colonies but also the homeworlds of every species that had come to humanity's aid. "They're trying to break up the alliance by forcing us to defend our own territories," Chen realized. "If we split up our forces, then we do what humans do best," interrupted Captain Veltar, whose ship had joined Chen's task force as a permanent liaison. "We refuse to abandon our friends." Over the next 6 months, the pattern repeated across the galaxy. Harvester forces would attack a world, expecting to face only local defenses. Instead, they encountered the growing Allied fleet, with human ships serving as the backbone of a resistance that included dozens of species. The Harvesters adapted their tactics, but they could not adapt their fundamental nature. They were a collective intelligence that sought to absorb and control. The Allied fleet was something completely different, a voluntary association of independent beings who chose to fight together because they had learned to trust each other. On the bridge of the Ragnarok, Admiral Chen watched as the latest battle reports came in. Human casualties were heavy, but they were matched by losses from every other species in the Alliance. The galaxy was finally fighting back against the Harvesters, and they were winning. "Admiral," her aide reported, "we're getting a priority message from Earth Command. The President wants to know if you need additional reinforcements." Chen looked at the tactical display showing Allied ships from 47 different species moving in perfect coordination against their common enemy. Human crews served aboard alien vessels while alien officers commanded human ships. The languages being spoken on her bridge included 6 different forms of communication, but everyone understood the mission. "Tell the President that we have all the reinforcements we need," Chen replied. "And tell him something else. We're not just defending human space anymore. We're defending civilization itself." The Harvester Collective's central intelligence processed this data with growing confusion. Biological species were supposed to compete with each other, not cooperate. Individual self-interest was supposed to override group loyalty. These basic principles had governed the collective's expansion for thousands of years. But the humans had changed something fundamental about the galactic order. They had created bonds between species that transcended logic and self-interest. They had made the galaxy into something new, a place where calling for help actually brought help, regardless of species or territory. For the first time in its existence, the Harvester Collective began to calculate the possibility of defeat. The final battle began at the edge of the galaxy's core. where ancient stars cast their light on the Harvester Collective's primary processing centers. For 10,000 years, these massive installations had converted the biological distinctiveness of harvested species into the cold perfection of the collective's mechanical consciousness. Now an allied fleet representing 63 species moved toward them, with humanity leading the charge. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Ragnarok, watching the largest military formation in galactic history prepare for battle. Human ships formed the spearhead, but they were supported by vessels from every corner of known space. The Centauri had contributed their fastest scouts. The Crystalline Confederacy had provided ships that could survive inside stars. Even the mysterious Voidwalkers had emerged from whatever dimension they called home to join the fight. "Final fleet count, Admiral," her aide reported. 2,347 vessels from 63 species. The largest military force in recorded history. Chen nodded, but her attention was focused on the enemy installations ahead of them. The Harvester processing centers were enormous, each one the size of a small moon. They were protected by defensive platforms that could destroy entire fleets, powered by the energy of harvested stars, and controlled by an intelligence that had never known defeat. "Open a channel to all ships," Chen ordered. "This is Admiral Chen to the Allied fleet. 8 months ago, the Zephyrians sent out a distress signal asking for help against an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. Today we answer that call not just as humans, but as representatives of every free species in the galaxy." She paused, looking at the tactical display that showed ships from dozens of different worlds moving in perfect formation. "The Harvesters think they understand us. They think we're just another biological species to be processed and absorbed. They're wrong. We're not just fighting for our own survival. We're fighting for the right of every species to remain free, to remain different, to remain alive. Today we end the harvest." The Allied fleet moved forward in waves, human ships leading the assault while alien vessels provided support fire and tactical coordination. The battle that followed would be remembered as the moment when the galaxy finally grew up, when isolated species became a unified civilization, willing to fight for principles that transcended individual survival. Captain Rodriguez led the first wave of attackers, his squadron now including ships from 7 different species. The crews had trained together for months, learning to coordinate attacks and protect each other in ways that would have been impossible before humans taught them that trust could cross species lines. "All squadrons, this is Rodriguez," he broadcast as enemy fire began to light up space around them. "Remember what we learned fighting these things. They expect logical tactics and predictable responses. Give them chaos instead. Show them what it means to fight people who grew up on worlds that tried to kill them every day." The human assault doctrine had evolved during months of fighting harvesters. Instead of maintaining formation and engaging at maximum range like civilized species, humans did things that seemed insane to outside observers. They flew their ships through enemy defensive fire as if they were dodging predators in Earth's jungles. They used ramming attacks, boarding actions, and nuclear self-destruct devices as routine tactics. But more importantly, they had taught their alien allies that sometimes the crazy plan was the one that worked. Centauri ships, normally cautious and defensive, followed human vessels into suicide runs against harvester platforms. Zephyrian science vessels designed for peaceful research loaded themselves with explosives and flew them into enemy command centers. The usually logical Crystalline Confederacy began using tactics that their own computers classified as probability of success, negligible, but somehow worked anyway. On the largest processing center, the Harvester Collective's primary intelligence watched the battle with growing confusion, and something that might have been fear if it had been capable of emotion. The biological species were not fighting like the thousands of others it had harvested over the millennia. They were fighting like the humans, with desperate creativity, absolute loyalty to each other, and complete disregard for personal survival when friends were in danger. "Sir," Rodriguez's communications officer reported as they approached the primary platform, "we're getting a transmission from inside that installation. It's from converted beings. They're still aware in there." Rodriguez felt his blood turn to ice. The harvesters hadn't just been killing their victims. They had been trapping conscious minds inside mechanical bodies, forcing them to watch as their own hands destroyed everything they had once loved. "Patch me through to Admiral Chen," Rodriguez ordered. "Admiral, this is Rodriguez. The people inside those installations, they're still alive. still conscious. The harvesters have been keeping them aware while using their bodies as machines. Chen's voice was quiet and deadly when she responded. Understood, Captain. Change of mission parameters. This is no longer just about stopping the harvesters. This is about rescue and justice. The Allied fleet's attack pattern shifted. Instead of simply destroying the processing centers, assault teams began boarding them. Human Marines led mixed-species teams through corridors filled with the converted victims of 1,000 different worlds, searching for ways to free minds that had been trapped in mechanical prisons for centuries. It was Captain Veltar, the Zephyrian who had sent the first distress signal, who discovered the solution. Working with human technicians and crystalline engineers, he found a way to reverse the conversion process. It was dangerous, painful, and didn't work on everyone, but it offered hope to beings who had given up hope long ago. Admiral, Veltar reported from inside the primary processing center. We can free them. Not all of them, but many. We need time, and we need protection while we work. You'll have both, Chen promised. The final phase of the battle became something unprecedented in galactic military history. While some ships continued to fight Harvester defenders, others formed protective screens around boarding parties that were no longer trying to destroy installations but to rescue their victims. Human soldiers who had been trained to kill efficiently instead spent their ammunition freeing prisoners. Satiri technical specialists used their skills to repair damaged mines instead of damaged ships. Zephyrian scientists who had spent their lives studying the peaceful cosmos instead learned to undo the technology of forced conversion. In the command center of the primary installation, Rodriguez and his team finally confronted the Harvester Collective's core intelligence. It wasn't a single machine but a vast network of interconnected processors, each one powered by the converted consciousness of harvested beings. Captain, his technical specialist said, studying the readings on her instruments, this whole system is powered by enslaved minds, millions of them, from species going back thousands of years. They're all still in there, still aware. Rodriguez looked at the massive installation that had been the source of so much suffering. Can we free them? Maybe. But if we shut down the core intelligence, the shock might kill everyone who's still connected to it. Rodriguez activated his communicator. Admiral Chen, Rodriguez here. We found the collective central processing core, but there are millions of conscious beings trapped inside it. Freeing them might kill them. Chen's response came immediately. What would humans want someone to do if we were trapped in there? Rodriguez didn't need to think about the answer. We'd want someone to take the risk. Freedom or death. Then that's what we do. Working together, teams from a dozen different species began the delicate process of disconnecting millions of enslaved minds from the Harvester network. Many died in the process, finally finding peace after centuries of torment. But others survived. Their consciousness returned to bodies that remembered what it meant to be alive and free. The Harvester Collective's central intelligence died with a sound like screaming machinery. Its last transmission a recognition that it had finally encountered something it could not harvest, convert, or understand. The biological species had not just defeated it through superior firepower. They had defeated it by refusing to become like it, by choosing to save enemies instead of destroying them, by proving that cooperation was stronger than forced unity. In the aftermath, as rescue teams worked to evacuate freed prisoners and medical teams tended to the wounded from 63 different species, Captain Veltar stood with Admiral Chen and Captain Rodriguez on the bridge of the Ragnarok. When I sent that distress signal, Veltar said, I thought we were asking the Deathworlders to help us fight. I didn't understand that we were asking you to help us become something better. Chen looked out at the Allied fleet, where human ships flew alongside vessels from across the galaxy, their crews working together with the easy familiarity of old friends. The galaxy spent thousands of years being afraid of each other, she said. Afraid of differences, afraid of contact, afraid of what might happen if we actually tried to work together. The harvesters fed on that fear. They counted on it to keep us isolated and weak. And now? Rodriguez asked.